Okay, welcome everyone to Episode 6 of Wargamers. So, a couple things before we dive into the podcast. If you're not familiar, I changed the name of the actual podcast from The Strategy Wargamers to just Wargamers because it's just easier that way. The Strategy Wargamers is a mouthful. Wargamers is just quick, straight to the point. And honestly, that's who we all are that's listening and who I'm interviewing. We're all Wargamers, right? This is going to give you an opportunity to interact and actually get involved in these podcasts. If you become a Patreon supporter, you're going to be able to actually attend the live interviews, actually participate through the in-app chat, as well as submit questions to the developers that we're interviewing. So this is going to change the way we're going to do this podcast a little bit, and by giving you, the listener, the opportunity to actually interact and participate in it. So that's the two pieces of information I wanted to hand out to you guys before we jump into the podcast. This week we have Marco Minoli from Slitherine. He's the marketing director of Slitherine. He's been there for quite a bit, and we got a chance to talk to him about, well, everything strategy games and a little Battlestar Galactica. Here it is, guys. Okay, I'm here with Marco from Slitherine. How are you, Marco?
I'm fine, thank you.
So let's get right into it. I wanted to have a whole slew of questions to ask you. So let's start up. What is your job at Slitherine?
I'm the director of marketing, so I handle all the marketing team, commercial side of things, and communication aspects of the company, from positioning the games to launching them and following up with sales and all that kind of stuff.
Oh, nice. Okay, cool. So how long have you been doing this?
Well, I'm doing games since 1997.
It's a little bit.
That's when I started my marketing career in video games. And I'm with Slitherine now since 2007, so about basically 10 years.
So why strategy games? Why did you go into for Slitherine and not for... Why was Slitherine special?
Well, I was working at the time. I was working for a publisher, Black Bean, and Black Bean was actually publishing boxed versions of Slitherine games, and we started working on projects together, and we went along very well. One of the projects in particular was a game called Great Battles of Rome, off the back of a game called Legion Arena. It was a 3D game about ancient battles. And that was one of the projects that we sort of marked as a sort of a turning point in the company, because it was when Slitherine started actually publishing games instead of just developing them. And I basically joined at that point. We were working on this project with History Channel, and there was a lot of marketing side of things involved in the project itself. So it was a natural evolution for the company to add the marketing aspect to it. Whilst when you're a developer, you kind of tend to have, especially at the time, tend to focus on development and do actually use the publisher for all the commercial aspects. So in the move from developer to publisher with a specific project, we decided to expand the team, and that's how the marketing department was born, and then how we moved into publishing as well.
Oh, wow, okay. Wow. The other question I have was concerning developers. How many on average, does work with Slitherine?
Well, it's a moving target, really. I mean, at the moment, I think we're working with about over 50 active development teams.
Wow.
Then you have a lot of prospect ones. Then there's developers that are maybe not working anymore on specific games, but we tend to update the games and make sure that they're still working even after 10 years. So we tend to work with maybe it's like community members and smaller teams. But I guess that over time, I think we've worked with over 150 different development teams.
Wow.
And at the moment, I think about 50. The market right now is really very busy, so we're trying to focus on games that really have a chance to make it in the market, because it's really busy, really hard. So we need to make a focus. At the moment, I think the number of games we have in development is around 50, 55, I think.
In terms of Slitherine, what is Slytherine's relationship with Matrix Games? I was always wondering about that.
Well, I mean, it's a group of companies. We tend to separate the two brands because Matrix Games has always been regarded as the number one brand for hardcore war games, and we don't want to water that down to attract new players with very light games. I mean, it's important that we keep the focus on very specific audiences. So the Matrix Games are always going to be the brand for hardcore war games. Historically, that's what it's always been, and we'd like to keep that for over time. And with development of technologies and such, but still with the complexity and the depth that these guys are used to. And the Slitherine brand is much more targeting a wider audience. Still, strategy gamers, still, expert gamers, but wider audience in regards to it can be different game modes. It can be introducing much more glitzy graphics and 3D elements and such. Sometimes it's a fine line, because there are games that are definitely crossing that line, but we tend to sort of give a brand to each game and then focus and target these games to the right people. And as a whole, the company is the same, and we don't, it's really customer-facing brands rather than actual companies.
Yeah, I so the way I kind of take that is like Matrix Games for people like me, and Slitherine for the rest of everybody else.
Sometimes you've got games like, for instance, I think a good example is Pike and Shot. It's made by a wargamer, because Richard Bodley Scott is 100% a wargamer, both tabletop and digital. But it's definitely a game that's light enough or lighter enough to attract a wider audience. So that's why we brand it Slitherine. Although there are a lot of Matrix Games players that really like it and enjoy it. So it's sometimes it's hard to identify, but we try and give the right place to the right game.
Yeah, one of my favorite, I would say, Matrix games would be War in the Pacific, because I think, bar none, I can't find any Pacific theater war game that's as encompassing as that.
Yeah. Well, you'd be surprised to know that War in the Pacific is now, 10, 12 years old? Oh, wow. And War in the Pacific Forum is still the busiest forum on the Matrix site.
Oh, wow, really?
By far. It's just amazing. Goes on forever, discussions and new scenarios, and
that's what happens when you make a great game.
So it's really amazing.
But so in talking about games, what's your favorite strategy game that you ever played?
Wow, it's I think
that's a big one.
I'm kind of a lighter strategy gamer than the hardcore ones. So. My probably favorites are from the past are games like Commandos and XCOM, and there was a game called Laser Squad Nemesis, which I really liked back in the days. It's still pretty popular, and that kind of more squad based, more tactical type of game. But I kind of try and play a bit of everything. And just not only because it's competition or because we'd like to know what's happening, but because I think that the world of strategy gaming is the one that's evolving and changing the most out of all the genres out there. I mean, a driving game will always be a driving game. You always have a track and a car, right? And a first-person shooter can change a lot, but ultimately it's just about shooting people and shooting creatures or whatever. Strategy games have so much of a variety, so much of a difference between each other, and there's such an evolution that just keeps the thing very interesting.
Now, we're talking about the future of strategy gaming, using that as a segue. What are your thoughts of about strategy games on tablets? Is that the future of where everything is going? I know Steve Jobs back in 2010 was saying that the majority of people are going to own cars, referencing cars being tablets and then trucks being PCs like laptops and desktops. Do you see that heading in that direction?
I guess the right answer is that strategy gamer on tablet was the future. We're in a state of the market right now where basically you have PC platform is really very, very busy. So there's a lot of innovation there in terms of new ideas and new design aspects and new angles. But it's very, very hard to raise the head above the parapet because there's hundreds of releases every day. On tablets, I think that the problem is that the tablet market itself is not there hasn't been an evolution in the target audience for that platform. There's a lot more phones. There's a lot of more smartphones that will always be a great platform for tactical games, but for grand strategy games, for strategy games, turn-based strategy games, for tile-based or hex-based big war games, I don't see tablets and iPhones being the future, just because tablets are not selling enough and broadening the potential target players, and iPhones are just too small screens to actually fit into the screen. I think that PC will remain the platform of preference for strategy gamers. Although I see very interesting things like at E3 just been announced the new Ubisoft Nintendo collaboration, this tactical game with Rabbids and Mario. And I was surprised by the fact that the next big Mario game will be a turn-based tactical game, basically, on a grid. Yeah, it's just amazing. It just tells you how much strategy gaming has the potential to grow over time.
They were saying how a lot of commentators on during the E3 were saying that was a very strange move for Nintendo. Not that it was a bad move, but it was very strange because it was not what they were used to seeing from Mario on Nintendo.
Yeah, no, I'm curious to see that gameplay because this can open us a world of opportunities out there. I mean, they're basically it's simplified, it's much streamlined and everything, but that's a style of gameplay that was never brought to the masses like this. So it can really bring us a lot of opportunities for the future.
The thing that concerns me about strategy games on tablets is I have basically all three. I have a tablet, MacBook Pro, and a phone. Now I use my phone more than anything because it's it's easy to very portable. And believe it or not, I use my tablet more than I use my laptop, and the reason being is because of convenience. It's much more portable. And I've noticed that on the iPad and Android marketplace for tablets and such, developers are not making games for strategy games anymore. Would you be able to define why there's such a hesitation to? I noticed that Slitherine has made a lot of iPad strategy games, which I'm very thankful for. I sink in hundreds of hours for that, so thank you for that. But I want to know why, it's especially the Android marketplace is not being saturated as much.
Well, basically, it's a matter of business model. Nowadays, the majority of the turnover on Android games, the vast majority is done by free-to-play games with in-app purchases. This type of business model is very hard to break through with, especially for niche audiences. So you end up with, at the moment, I think market value for user acquisition for new users on these platforms is about $6. So what you end up with is a free-to-play game. You have to spend $6 for each user you get into the game. And then you will have to create a critical mass big enough to have people spend money in that game. So it's a whole business model that's completely different from what the strategy gamers and the war gamers are used to. And as soon as you release a free-to-play game on any platform, strategy gamers and wargamers will think, well, this is too light. I don't think I'm going to like it. So it's almost like creating a market from scratch. And I don't think there's anyone out there who can afford to take the risk of doing that. But maybe Paradox will try that route. I don't know. But you understand that it's really a huge risk for anyone to take against the big brands. No surprise that over the last 3 years, if you look at the top 10 of most played games on iOS and Android, you'll probably find that 50%, 70% of that top 10 is remained the same over time. That's because the big guys are dominating, and the economy is made out of these, huge games, and everything else is struggling out there.
Kind of like the games, kind of like Clash of Clans, things like that.
Yeah, and some people think that these are strategy games. So
yeah, I'm not.
Which they
I'm
are,
not
to be honest. But it's a very different type of strategy game.
Yeah, I'm not. I'm a fan of those type of games. It kind of lacks depth and anything substantial. So I've tried it. I really wasn't a big fan of it. But I was always hoping that the tablet would become the next platform for in-depth strategy games for maybe in my lifetime that I would be able to see War in the Pacific on the iPad, but it's a guy can always hope.
Well, no, we tried. I have to say that we have actually we're actually developing one of Gary Grigsby's games for iPad. Word at War. I don't know if you remember that game.
Oh yeah. I remember seeing I remember the news item. It was even in the forum for a while.
I think we brought it up in the conference as well to start showing it. But ultimately UI became too much of an issue, and it's just very hard. Just these games need just a complete redesign, complete overhaul. So. We ended up just putting the project on ice for the moment.
Do you think it's even, from a design aspect, do you think it's even possible to bring a game like that to the tablet in terms of just sheer amount of could the touch replace the mouse in terms of that aspect of the game?
I'm not a designer, so I can't really tell you, but I think that anything is possible with clever solutions and new technologies. That anything can happen. I think that the main issue is that the risk for us was really down to porting games to iPad, which was a big investment, but it's not like creating a game from scratch. So if we'd have to, I wouldn't say that porting any of the big war games is possible right now. What you'd have to do is just redevelop and redesign the games from scratch to fit on the platform. And that's when the problem starts to happen, because you then develop a game for a very limited number of people, because the number of iPad users has gone down, or just not increased enough to create a potential critical mass of players out there to develop a game specifically for the platform.
Yeah, I noticed with the sales. That the iPad, especially in the last quarter, didn't do as well as it's been on decline. But I think that's mainly because from when I worked back at the company, I remember that a lot of people were talking about the reason being was people don't see the tablet as a PC replacement. Now that might change with iOS 11, because from what I saw and from what I heard is it greatly redesigns the entire tablet interface with drag and drop and such. But a lot of people, when they a good example would be college students. When college students get ready to, get their stuff, books, whatever, laptop, the first thing they think of is all right, let's get a laptop for him or her as they go to school. Yeah. It's not like, hey, let's go get a tablet for them, because they consider a tablet more of a consumption device rather than a productivity device.
Yeah, I agree. I think I don't know how much is down to operating systems and how they develop, because if you look at what Microsoft's tried to do. They're all trying to merge the different worlds, but ultimately it's just two ways of using the systems that are just different. So it's like I don't see it based on the fact that it's the operating system. I think it's just the fact that the iPad or in general the tablet have, I think, and I'm very bad at making projections and everything, but I think that the iPad overall has lost the momentum, and it's going to be very hard in general for the tablets to get them back to new life unless something dramatic happens, in the way that the platform itself is perceived.
Yeah, that's one reason why I was kind of surprised when Microsoft Surface Pro came out. I'm even at the point of like going back and forth of purchasing it, because just even conceptualize me having a tablet in my hand playing a War in the Pacific on the go, maybe like at the DMV, would be pretty sick.
I have Surface in it, and I have to say it's really a really powerful platform. And I think I'm going to buy a laptop as well on that Surface. Because just need to change it. So I've seen that the new laptops from Microsoft are just amazing. So
yeah, beautiful too. They're incredibly beautiful.
I really want to give them a try.
Yeah, do you have you said the Surface, the Surface Pro, right? The one that's like a tablet but also has like a kickstand. Yeah. That was the one that I was thinking about buying, and I'm going back and forth because I'm very invested into the iOS ecosystem, so it's very difficult to just leave and I'm more like a Microsoft fanboy, so I'm on the other side of the fence. So the one other thing I wanted to ask you was, well, actually, before I get into the really juicy one, I wanted to ask you a couple more questions about what was the most challenging project Slitherine's ever worked on?
Oh, challenging. Well. In terms of us working, I mean, you have to think we work with developers, so it's external developers. I think that in terms of what we develop internally, I think the most challenging project is definitely going to be so far the renewal of the close combat engine and bringing close combat to a new life. We decided basically now 3 years ago that the old close combat engine was going to be retired, and that's when we acquired the full rights for any close combat game. So we invested a lot of our money and energy to sort of put this big brand franchise into the new world. So since then we're developing the new game system, and it's been a real challenge because it's almost been like developing the game 3 times from scratch over the last years. We've started with Unity, and then we decided to move to our own Archon engine. Now we're almost at the point of going beta, which is a relief. But this also means that from start of development to end, we'd probably have spent 3.5 years, full 3.5 years of development time and development money on this project, and it's definitely going to be our most ambitious internal projects ever made. So I guess that's one that, from our internal perspective, that we found ambitious. And in terms of our partners, development partners, I mean you can't think that a game like War in the West, War in the East, even Command. These are huge games. These are huge projects, and if you don't really have a passion to do these things for maybe 10 years, 15 years in development, you never get to see the end of them. I think this is what I like about our developers. They really are so invested in the projects that they don't care if it's going to take them 10 years to finish them. It's just amazing.
Gotta love that passion. Yeah, that's really big. Now, in terms of passion, I wanted to talk about another passion of mine, Battlestar Galactica. This announcement, literally, I mean, it blew away me and pretty much the whole gaming community, and not only gaming community, but fans of the show that have been like clamoring, that have been dreaming for a game like this. I'm just curious, how did this partnership emerge? How did this all begin?
Well, it's been almost a natural one, I would say. the developers of Starhammer, Black Lab Games, were we were looking at what to do next with them, and their game was screaming for an adaptation to that world, but we knew that the current game was not going to be enough, because when you work with big companies, big license holders, they want you to be, developing the best possible game out there. So we had to rethink the whole project and make it so that this would please both the fans and the strategy gamers. And we put together a design that would serve well for the purpose, and we submitted it to Universal, and we started discussions. And I think that if you think about the franchise and the game itself, and what can be done for our audience, and you say you're a fan, I think there's so many fans out there that are also strategy gamers of the right age, of the right target, that are just perfectly fitted for this. It's almost like a natural evolution. We wanted to bet on this, and I think what you'll see soon is going to blow you away.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, when the teaser trailer that you put out, I mean, it was, and the product description that you guys made was like, it was basically what was in my mind about like 10 years ago when I think the one Battlestar game came out. It was I think it was a MMORPG,
yeah,
or whatever it was called. But basically that came out, and I was thinking, I was like, it would be great, a strategy game involving Battlestar Galactica where you can command, actual battle stars, and go to war and, plan and do some strategy. And you guys did it. I mean, this game looks incredible, and it's coming out this year from what I've understand.
Yes, it's coming out this summer. Yes.
Wow.
So it's not too far away.
So
we're going to have the first look at gameplay very, very soon. So we're going to do this live on Twitch first time, and I tell you, I mean, this is good. This is a game that we're bringing, as you know, to PC and consoles, Xbox One and PS4. The developer is an Australian developer, Black Lab Games. They're based in Perth, and they are probably the biggest fans in the world of Battlestar Galactica. So everything that we put together, the lore, the story, the characters, everything is so well created that we often have comments from Universal saying, this is perfect.
Wow,
we couldn't have done it this better, or for lack of a better word, I think a better expression. I think it's just to convey how good it's going to be into the Battlestar Galactica world.
When you mentioned Xbox One and PS4, I notice you guys are dabbing into that. I think you mentioned that Battle of the Bulge might be is heading over to console.
Yep.
Is this going to be? Could this be possibly this? I always consider it casual gaming, but a lot of people probably chew me out for that. But I can consider Xbox One and PS4 kind of more casual audience because you have one controller. It's not as in depth as a strategy game. But can we see that as like a large future strategy market?
I mean, the market itself will tell us. At the moment, we see it more as an opportunistic platform where you basically have games that are being developed in Unity, and they are requiring less work to be ported. And if we manage to get the UI right and the controls right, simpler games like Battle of the Bulge, Heroes of Normandy. These games are definitely very well suited for the platform, especially because they are almost like board games, digital board games. And these platforms are very good for digital board games. In general, they've always done very, very well. The first versions of Carcassonne and Settlers of Catan have done extremely well on Xbox back in the days. So there is a big audience for these things. Even I remember Ubisoft once released a card game based on the Panzer General license. It wasn't a brilliant game, but it did very well. And I think that you really have to see these things not as a future of the genre, but more like an opportunity in time that commercially makes sense and also helps us expand the audience, because people that don't know us at all, because we're mainly PC games developer, they will get to know us from these platforms and maybe come and know more about strategy games and deep war games through these games, and maybe join the family later on.
Yeah, open up a brand new world for them. The last question I have is, so you guys brought in intellectual property, Battlestar Galactica, and it's going to blow away. It's not even a question of if. I know it's going to blow away the entire gaming audience and also fans of the show like me, because your servers are going to crash, by the way. I just want to let you know that. The amount of people are going to do that. So I just want to let you heads up. But since you brought Battlestar Galactica, is there any possibility any future games involving other IPs such as like Star Trek or Star Wars?
Yes. I mean, there's all the opportunities out there. I think that from a perspective of our goal is always to get more players and get to people to discover our games. So what we did with Warhammer, for instance, was exactly that. We basically used the license, the beachhead, to attract a new audience to our war games and tactical strategy games and so on, because the depth of these games is what scares people off. So if they find a familiar setting, if they find something they like, they might be trying it. And if they try and like it, they may be moving to something else. So it's always a matter of developing games that are both attached to the license and deliver this sense of, okay, I'm playing something serious here. Let's see what else is out there. And I think that anything that can help us to achieve that goal, and at the same time is working for our audience, because you also have to have the core audience joining, then I think anything of that can happen. Of course, Star Wars, Star Trek, they're big licenses, and they're not always available to sign. But I think there's plenty of opportunities out there, and we're exploring some of them, and you might hear from some news very soon about that.
Oh, wow, okay. I'm very excited about that. But that's all the questions I have. Thank you, Marco, for doing this interview with me. I appreciate it. And you gave away some great news and insight. And I know I'm kind of very stoked about some of the stuff that you said, and I can't wait for things to come out this summer, because this is definitely going to be a great 2017 for strategy games.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Marco. Okay, that does it for this episode of Wargamers. Be sure to catch us next time as we bring in a new guest, and stop by our Patreon page, so this way you can pledge your support, and this way you can get involved in our next interview and submit your own questions so you can get them answered, things that you have on your mind. So that does it for this episode, guys. I will catch you in the next one. See you then.